going to do a little introduction about this bike, and then we're going to introduce its new owner, and she can talk about what she's done to it. My dad bought this bike many years ago from Dave Wedlake. He got it from an estate that somebody had passed away, and a friend of his. My dad bought it, and we left it here in Oregon. He lives in North Carolina, and then when he'd come out to visit me, we'd work on the bike together. And so it was just an interesting bike. They're very fascinating and very nice bikes to have. So we did a little bit of modifications to it, added the dual discs up front, rewired the bike, but really didn't put a lot of miles on it. And then as he's gotten a little bit older now and can't ride as much, we decided to pass that along to somebody who would really enjoy the bike. And so we found the perfect owner for it. So Cara, do you want to come on in?
Okie dokie.
Come on down
Cara.
here.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So Cara, what really intrigued you about the Ducati and particularly this bike?
Well, in 1982, I was at TT Motors in Berkeley, and I bought my Commando that I bought, a Mark III there.
Right.
And in the back, they had a little shop area.
Yeah.
And they were tuning up a 750 Super Sport, green frame style.
Yes, yeah.
And I heard that thing, and the sound just stuck with me. And so it kept rattling in my brain, you know, I want to experience Ducati.
Yeah.
And so then, you know, through Mike, I found out that you had this bike and you were thinking of selling it. And so I came over and rode it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't running that well. The cars were funky.
Yeah.
And the steering was a little weird.
Uh-huh.
And I wasn't sure, but the bike was rare, and I knew that you know, wouldn't be a chance to have one of these.
Yeah.
You know, and the price was good.
Yeah.
So I decided, well, I'll buy it and see what happens. So I fell in love with it. This was 2 years ago, and I bought the bike and drove it home, and hoping it wouldn't stall, and started to work on it. And everything looked really good, but compression was a little low. The clock had 15,000 miles on it. And I subsequently learned that the old style one-piece oil scrapers are a little rough on the bores. So I found a pair of sleeves, stock size, and had Les Barker in Vancouver put new sleeves in the barrels. And so I kept the original pistons. They were in good shape. So I didn't want to go anything oversized. I don't want any more power or any more displacement. It's plenty fast.
Yeah.
Les did that work. Put it back together. The cylinder heads look really good. Somebody had put guides in it. I mean, they look great. And Jim helped me with doing a little very, very light lap on the valves just to prove that they weren't pitted. So that was the engine work mainly. Well, let's talk about what this is. This is a 1975 Ducati 860 GT. Now, the first engines that Ducati built that were twins was like the 750 Super Sport. And those are very, very rare. And this is about the only affordable Ducati of the bevel drive era. The thing about it is, in a 12-year period, they built about 5,500 bevel drive bikes of all flavors. 900s, 750s, 860s. And so it's quite a rare machine. They made maybe 500 a year. But parts are available. Sometimes you got to scratch, but it's not as bad as you might imagine for a limited production machine. This is pretty much the first series of 860s, kickstart only. And later, like the next year, they went to the electric start, which is ugly. It's a really ugly system they came up with. Getting a look inside, you know, these are the bevels. This is a bevel drive engine. So instead of a belt coming up to the overhead cam, there's one overhead cam per cylinder, and there's a shaft and a bevel gear set in here that drives those cams. And so I got a look at both sides in the process. All the gears look great. No pitting, just the light shine where they engage, but it just didn't look mechanically thrashed. Very happy about that. And I finished the carb rebuilding process. It's been a 2-year project. I had to make some parts. The original side panels were these weird angled, louvered, painted things that looked really 70s futuristically bad. And so I have a machine shop, so I made side panels for the bike and a new instrument panel and this contraption to lift the peg and allow the kickstart to come up higher. That also required a new pad on the brake lever. So all these little parts just seem to migrate towards the bike. It's becoming its own thing. With the stock lever down, it's further down than that. You can't really kick it from standing on the bike. So if you stall it in an intersection, you got to stop, put it up on a center stand, come around the bike, get it started. And you know, that's a lot to do while people are honking at you. At least with this system, I could conceivably kick it over. I've only done it once, it worked, but it's still tricky. The geometry just isn't. I mean, Ducati figured you're going to get on a bike, get on a racetrack and go. That's it. You don't need a kickstart. You don't need anything. Just go. And but I drive around town a lot. What I really like about it is it has a sense of precision about it. Back when I was younger and had money, I played with a few Alfa Romeos. So my heart really is in the Italian camp to begin with. It's 5-speed and the gearbox is real smooth. You can cruise down the freeway and, you know, it just likes to cruise. It has a turning radius of a small cruise ship. It's 1,550 millimeters and speeds below 20. It's just like a bicycle going too slow. It's meant to move. The other thing is, between the crankshaft and the clutch basket, it's gear driven. So when you apply gas, you don't have a primary chain winding and unwinding. You don't have this back and forth thing constantly. And I really never liked that. This has instant power. When you give it power, it's right there and you're not taking the lash out of the drivetrain. Even though it's got a chain and back, you don't really feel any lash. It's just lovely, like, oh, that's how it's supposed to be. So that's one of the things. It loves to go. It's not nimble. It's not a bike you flick around, but it's a GT bike, like the old GT Ferraris. We're just great at 90 on a freeway. You're just going through the turns and like that. So when I got the bike from Dave, there was a plastic piece here. He had cut a little plastic dog bone to hold the instruments. And I thought, well, that's not a bad idea, but because I've got machine shop capabilities, I figured I'd make one out of aluminum and make it look somewhere between production and prototype. I like that look. Managed to engrave Ducati in it. So I like that a lot. And the side panels, of course, were redone. I've got my turn signal delay. So it's a momentary switch. You flick it, and your turn signals will flick for 11 seconds, and then they go off by themselves, because I can never remember to turn them off. I just made a little module that went in here. You could buy them for like 90 bucks, but I had parts laying around, so I just made one for about $4. This bike's pretty heavy. I mean, it's like 480 pounds. And so for me to put it on the center stand, which you have to do a lot because that's how you start it. So you're always using the center stand. Grabbing under the seat here was pretty rough, not great geometry. And so I added a lifting handle on the shock tower, which, by the way, later models had something there just about like that. But the real trick was on the center stand, Jim welded a 2-inch piece of steel going aft onto the center stand. So the lever arm was 4 inches from the pivot point of the center stand. 2 more inches gives you 33% more push. And it also improves the geometry because you can push backwards like a mule. And it made getting it on the center stand a lot easier. My back isn't the best. And so that was a really welcome feature. But the nice thing is the work that Dave did, the brakes, the electrical system, he put in the SOXA electronic ignition. All that stuff was done impeccably. I mean, the wiring was tidy and beautiful. I haven't even thought about it. But the only major electrical thing I had to do was add in a kill switch that wasn't there. It was a good machine, it just needed to be completed, you know, more than restored. Yeah, it's lots of fun.
And those are the original silencers then?
These are the original. People hate them, but I'm perfectly happy with them being quiet. I mean, I don't like loud noise. I wear earplugs while I'm riding. The other thing about it is, this engine likes to rev up. I mean, it really is designed to rev up. And you don't feel like you're hurting it. It's like ready to go. You know, how much do you want to rev? And that's something that I really like about the way the engine works. What I can say is that this bike kind of does what I always hoped a motorcycle would do, just the way it feels and the way it sounds. And of course, I have a soft spot for Italian engineering. So this filled the bill, and I sold the Norton. about a year ago. The guy that got it was thrilled, and I had done a lot of work on it. By the time I got done with it, I'd gone through everything except the bottom end, which didn't need it. And so he got a good machine, and he calls me back a couple days later and says, "This bike is way better than I imagined." And I said, "Well, that's good. Went to the right person." Here's the funniest part of this story. I've been investigating Ducati, and I have to have left-hand shift, because that's really the only thing I ever learned. And at this age, I'm not going to switch back and forth. And so when I finally got clear that I could probably find an 860, it was left-hand shift, it's a Ducati, I talked to you, Mike, and he said, "Well, Dave might have one." So within 24 hours, I had ridden this bike once I became psychologically clear that I was going to go look at one. It was like, you can't make this up. So that's the story here. Thank you.
Thanks very much for watching, guys. This has been another tale from the cul-de-sac. Please remember to subscribe and click the little bell and you'll get a notice whenever I release a new video, usually every Sunday morning and sometimes during the week.